So here's a layout that I'm using for this current album that I'm making here at Unknown in Anacortes. I'll give you the rundown on it here. Got my guitars that I usually tutor with, my SG and my T60. Then we've got Aiden's Dan Electro Baritone, which I'm using specifically on the track that I was recording today. And then I'm running that into this Sun Solaris currently, but my orange amp will be here tomorrow for the band stuff. My pedal board, we had to take off the fat. All these things were causing too much electrical signal to go through the amp, which was causing buzzing, so we took off the extras, and now we're down to the clean sounds, so we don't have any buzz going through. This right here is supposedly it's the first drum machine, or at least a very early drum machine. It's owned by Phil Elverum of Mount Airy. It's the 1959, Wurlitzer Sideman. I was using that for a track today. And then over here we've got this bass setup. I'm using this Sun 2000S into a 215 and an Ampeg. I think this is an 810, if I'm correct. Or maybe not. Usually the fridge Ampegs are 810s, so that's what I'm used to them being. And then I'm using these two keyboards. This is a Ace Tone. This is a Korg, and that's going into the Roland Jazz Chorus 212. Vibraphone. This vibraphone's having electrical issues lately. Last time I was here, we couldn't use it at all because the motor was like overheating. They were worried it was going to burst into flames. But this time they told me they have it half fixed, so we used it today, but you know, we're very cautious. The motor's still iffy on it, I guess. And then we got this Yamaha grand piano, which I tracked a segment of one of the songs on today. I really only worked on 2 tracks today, but only like little tiny pieces. I probably recorded about 12 minutes of music in total today, out of a probably 90-minute album. But, you know, lots of details into those one little part of the album. All right.
What is the philosophy of your newest album focused toward?
So my previous album, the last one that I released, Heaven's Gate, was fundamentally about the art of transcending or overcoming the experience of self in whatever format that might entail. And it closes with this track that is called My Descent. And the title of this album that I'm working on now is called Flesh and the Devil. And the idea is that it's addressing the internal conflict within oneself. Basically the opposite end of the spectrum from the strife of transcendence, and instead looks at the reflection of the self, and it fixates on, instead of this like optimist Heaven's Gates imagery, like obviously when you think of the name Heaven's Gate, you think of a beautiful, shimmering, positive beacon. Heaven is generally, a good place in like a typical fashion. But when you hear flesh and the devil, it's like the exact opposite. And so a lot of it is more about really like picking through yourself, combing through all of the humility and the moral posturing and the depths of the internal struggle of being flawed and being a person who suffers. And so in that sense, the album itself is significantly darker in tone than all of my previous work has been this far. And I think that naturally is a reflection of the movement my music was always making was going that direction anyways, and I just have naturally followed it this far.
Is that some good water?
Yeah, it's pretty good. Washington water's pretty good. You don't know bad water until you've been to freaking Southern California and you've had their water.
Washington's the best water.
Los Angeles water's pretty rough.
I feel like that's
They tell you not to drink the tap there.
So, who's playing on this record?
So currently on the record, we've got playing on the record, Alex Kent from Sprain and Shearling is pretty dominant on the record. Nick, who's been drumming with me for a while, he also plays bass in another band out of Bellingham called Esso, and then he has various jazz projects that he does as, I guess, his day job for the most part. Then Aiden Blau's on the album, or not yet, but he will be tomorrow. He's coming in to record with me and Nick tomorrow. He's playing bass. He's part of the touring lineup currently. He's also in Esso. It's kind of, I guess, it's kind of their group with Shell, who's also on this record. He will be in here on Thursday playing drums with me. Aiden's also in Kareen, which is now, they're still at Bellingham, man. Desi lives in San Francisco, though. No.
That's right.
But yeah, Kareen is Aiden's, I guess, probably his main band, because he's probably the most active in that one. And then he's got Esso, and then he's playing bass in my band currently. And then Shell, as I mentioned, Shell's playing drums as a session drummer. Just because Nick's busy, I didn't want to take up a ton of his time. Nick's playing on all the songs that we play live, and then Shell's doing the, come in here, I want someone to play the drums because I'm not a good drummer type thing. And he's the drummer in Esso, which is all three of their band. So the way it would look on paper, it's as if Esso shoved me in the front and then played a bunch of my songs, and then Alex Kent's there. I don't know who's going to play with me in January yet, which will be the final sessions of the album next month. So I can't for certain say who's all on the album. I think that it's just us four playing, and then Alex Hubel's an engineer. Alex Kent also engineered Doing it itself. Well, it just like started doing that in the middle of that, and nothing had changed. I didn't turn anything on. No, I don't even have the red on the board right now. Hey man, don't always the rat. I don't understand.
Did we capture that? Okay, cool.
Okay, let's reamp it. Let's try that again, I guess. Yeah, I just think my compressor was like pushing the limits of the sustain, and that like caused that.
Yeah, so, that's what it sounded like.
That was weird. I don't know why I chose to do it then. Maybe it's because of the opening in my pickups.
Oh yeah, it's a gap in the
Yeah, it's like picking up more magnetics. Okay, let's try that again.
Oh, yeah. Flat. I didn't like that take either.
I've been writing this album, and there's tracks that I've dropped. I've said that's not part of the album. There's tracks that either were part of the album at one point, got dropped, and put back on, or had to be rewritten completely. There's a couple songs on the album that are still being rewritten. There's one I'm recording tomorrow called "The Rest Is Dross," which I originally wrote as a keyboard composition, but is now played with a full band. Memra, the Memra parentheses Flesh and the Devil, the title track of the album, I started writing when me and you were touring, and that song is the fleshed out version of what we were performing. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, in this experience of what I've been doing here versus every other scenario, is that I've been doing this one for so long that the image that I was painting is no longer, I don't know what it is anymore, and it's now a feeling. And that feeling has constantly evolved because it's been so long that it's matured and I've understood the nuances of it, and I look at it and I'm like, okay, well, this is this part of it and this is that part of it. And so, like, each track fundamentally is serving a role within a very complex thing that has evolved for so long that I can't describe it in simpler terms, where I usually would be able to be like, oh yeah, this is an image. And so, as far as predictions go for the process, I do have predictions, but the predictions may not end up being the real thing. And that has not always been how it is. This is the first time I've had an album where I started at point A having all these song titles, and then they all just dropped and changed into something new.
this one because it's closest when you lived here, or is there something significant and special about the Unknown that makes you keep coming back each record?
Yeah, so it's hard to say. When I first recorded here, that would have been the Triage album. I was 19 when I met Nick Wilbur, and I was pretty much in the headspace that if I was going to make an album like the Triage album, I was going to have to do it entirely on my own, in my own studio. And then I met Nick, and we did the album here. And the album, while flawed in its own right, is probably more about just young people learning how to write music than it is the studio's flaws or Nick's flaws, because I think that the reason I stick with it here is because the studio and Nick, this is the first album I've done without Nick being the engineer, but I've stuck with Nick because I trust Nick's opinion, and I trust this space because I've gotten comfortable in here. And when you're working in a studio, you're really at odds in any space, because you walk in there, and if you're not immediately able to immerse yourself in your music, you're never going to be able to record a piece of music that's meaningful in any capacity. You're going to make a hollow representation of the thing you've probably been doing in your free time much better. And, at that point, you might as well just record it at home. But here I found myself in the position where I have found that comfort, and I have found the capacity to work with people who understand my trajectory. They understand that I'm not coming from necessarily a common musical standpoint as a songwriter, and they don't fight me on that front. They encourage me, and they give me their wisdom. And I'm currently working with Alex Hubel. I have been for this entire album. Alex Hubel and then Alex Kent from Sprain, or Shearling now. And they both have been collaborators. Nick usually is pretty hands-off, but they've both made a point of digging into the thought process with me and helping me come up with ideas and find directions that maybe I wouldn't have found on my own. And that's been very helpful, and I think it's actually created a lot of magic on the record that I don't think would have existed otherwise. And so, I guess to answer your question in short, I choose this studio because of the people in it, mixed with the room itself has become kind of a homey place for me. Oh, I like that.
Cool.
Cool. There's two.
Now, can you give some of the history of your dynamic in this studio over the years?
Yeah, I think I maybe lightly touched on this in the previous question, but to expand on that, historically, I mean, this is the 8th album I've recorded in the studio over the last 5 years. And I recorded the Triage album here, which is probably the most stylistically similar to this album. Like, they're both similar in length, 90-plus minute albums with at least one song that's over 20 minutes. The Triage album has 4 songs that are over 20 minutes on it. And then this album has 2. And then, you know, there's all the August albums I've done previous to this, which are all, I kind of consider them like the pilgrimage back to this, as a wiser man, returning to this large sound that I'm doing as a more experienced songwriter. And I mean, the instruments in this studio, the vibraphone is on every single record I've ever done in here. The vibraphone I was talking about that's gonna burst into flames. The timpani that's down there is probably on every single record I've ever recorded. The bells, the big chimes, the church chimes are probably on every single record. That drum kit I've used on at least 3. That sun amp that I was showing you showed up on most, if not all, the records.
Yeah, that's right.
So the dynamic is kind of like, you know, I'm used to these sorts of things, but I'm still getting to this session currently is the 4th session for this album I've done in here, and I feel like just now, at this point, I'm at the point where I can stand in here and I can talk and know the logical steps and know where I'm going and know what I'm doing, and I can have an inkling of where I'm going with it. I can, you know, make inferences. I feel quite comfortable in this studio, and that's a very important thing to me, because I think that means that I'm allowing myself to let loose and create without fear of anything, really. If you spend your time in a studio being, you know, nervous about what the engineer is going to think of your song, or, you know, is this part going to be too weird for the people in this room? Are they going to laugh at it? You're going to neuter yourself, and you're going to end up performing weaker and creating music that sounds weaker, and the audience is going to recognize that you were uncomfortable in the studio, or at least, you know, for someone like me who's used to working in studios, you know, it is noticeable when you hear a record and you go, okay, I see what they were getting at, but it sounds like they were rigid. For like someone who's probably not experienced, they probably just think that you probably didn't rehearse the song very much and you're still figuring it out. So, you know, the dynamic of comfort and knowledge is important, but you also want an element of surprise, which is the challenge when you've been working in a studio repetitively over and over and over again, is you need to find new things within that to change it up. And so, like with Heaven's Gate, we used a lot of keyboards, as you remember.
Oh yeah.
We used a ton of keyboards. That's the keyboard album.
Yeah, I have
And
one
that's
on each
because
side of me.
we had to change the formula. You know, the first two August albums we did were very like acoustic, drum heavy, percussion heavy. Then Heaven's Gate was the keyboard album. This album is I've got an actual band that's rehearsed album. So naturally, the change in dynamic here is that there's actual experience,
Yeah.
and there's rehearsal. Yeah.
You finally made it. You finally gotten there.
Yeah, to not just creating something
Yeah. Out of that right away.
out of nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. and you know, they were improv, and as far as I'm concerned, you know, I think they're 13 minutes each. 13 minutes of improv is pretty short for an improv session, and for drum music, that's pretty short. That's because on that album, it was like the rejection of that whole long, you know, this, you have to live in this song kind of thing. It was more about like trying to write an actual song that people will remember, rather than making this monolith that people can live in, which I've returned to now because I think through my time both playing with the ideas that I've created for myself in my life and rejecting those same ideas, I have learned when and when not to do those things. And that's allowed me to be able to approach the old ideas of these long format songs in ways where I know what tastefully can, or at least in my opinion, I will probably look back on like 2 years and say that this record is overindulging on certain ideas that go on for too long. But I feel like I have seasoned myself with my experience enough to be able to come back to these 20-plus minute songs and do them effectively.
Nice.
But
Well,
I guess to answer that question, because I don't know if I gave a proper answer necessarily, it's historically been a plan to make songs that are that long. But, you know, if a song calls for that length, then it's appropriate.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, then it's unnecessary.
Well, we're pretty much at the end of the interview. Is there any things you want to add or any updates outside of the studio?
For the 4 leads alone.
Because the way guys back in the shop are constantly taking